My name is Nathaniel Dodson, and in today's Illustrator tutorial, we're going to take a look at doing a vector recreation of the new Mac Pro. Is the new Mac Pro the latest and greatest in high-end power computing and video editing, or is it just a $40,000 Cheesegrater looking video editing implement that nobody's really going to enjoy all that much? Who really knows? We'll find out someday, but for now, let's jump into Illustrator and get this thing started. Okay, the whole process begins here in Illustrator by going File, New to create, well, a new document. And we're going to go with a document that's 2560 by 1440. And we're also going to make sure we're working here with RGB color. That's what we want. Create that. And now I'm going to turn on my grid. So I go View and choose Show Grid. And the grid's actually set up exactly how I want it, but I'm going to show you exactly what I've got here. I'm going to go Illustrator Preferences. If you're on the Mac version, this is where Preferences is. On Windows, it's going to be here under the Edit menu down here somewhere. So go Illustrator Preferences and choose Guides and Grid. And all I've done, you can choose any color you like. I just made my subdivisions grid lines every 10 pixels with one subdivision. That's what I've done. I like it. I think it looks, well, not really looks good, but it just is going to work for our project, and that's the most important thing here. I'm going to zoom out. I'm actually going to bump off screen here as I hit the little hamburger menu and choose my layer panel options. I'm going to make the thumbnails a little bit bigger just so they're easier to see here in this tutorial. And I'm going to begin by selecting my rectangular tool, or just rectangle tool, click a single time, and create a 2560 by 1440 rectangle. This is going to be a background for us, and I am going to align this. I'm going to open my alignment panel, make sure I'm aligning to the artboard. I'm going to align horizontal and vertical centers just like that. Now this rectangle has both a white fill and a black stroke. I'm going to select the black stroke down here and hit the little slash icon to get rid of it. Then I'm going to select the fill, and we want to change the color here in the color panel. I want this to be not FFFFFF, but FB, FB, FB. It's just a very light gray. Apple does a lot of stuff where it's just over a slightly not white background, just a very light gray background. So there we have it with that. We can actually lock up this background by clicking the space between the eyeball and the colored bar, just so we don't move it. And let's get started creating the tower for the Mac Pro. We're going to do it over here on the left side of our document. Grab the rectangle tool, and I'm going to click a single time, and I want to create a 300 by 590 sized shape, so something like that. Now this, because it's multiples of 10, if I open my properties panel, 300 by 590, this means that it should align perfectly with our grid here. Now I can't really see what's going on because I just have this solid white, so I'm going to make this pink or something just so we can see it. Obviously this is not the color we're going to roll with. Let's go View and choose to Snap to Grid. This way our shape will just click right into our grid, and we can see here that it just lines up perfectly with all the rest of our grid. It's looking nice. So let's create the face of the tower of the Mac Pro. We're going to add a gradient to this. So with the shape selected, let's open the Properties panel. I'm going to choose Fill here, and I'm going to just choose one of the gradients, and then I'm going to hit Gradient Options. That's going to open up my gradient panel. And here in the gradient panel, I'm going to choose, first and foremost, edit this gradient, and we're going to add a few points. So I need 3 points on each side of my gradient, just like that. So the two end points should be at 0% location and 100% location. Whoop. Right there, 100% location. The second point is going to be at 3%, so very, very close to the first. And the third point is going to be at 12%. But actually, let's give them their colors first, and then we'll move them into place. So let's begin here with this first color. The first color should not be white. Instead, if I double-click on it here, I'm clicking and adding points all over the place. If I double click, I can go to my color panel and I can punch in exactly what I want, and I want that FB, FB, FB color. There we have it. So our first gray, and the other side of the slider has to be the same exact gray. So FB, FB, FB. There we have it. We've got our light grays. All right, the second color that we want is, I'm going to double click on this. We want to go with something like C0, C1, C3. Something right around there. In fact, we can just make this 193, which is just going to make it 193 across the board, which is going to make it a perfect gray. So C1, C1, C1 will work. I'll do that here for my other slider. So let's just punch in C1, 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 voila. And now for the middle color, we're going to double click the two innermost points. And for this one, I'm going to go, let's go E7, E7, E7. There you have it. And for the other side, of course, double click, and we're going to go E7, E7, E7. Got it. All right, now that we have all of our colors, we are going to position them where they need to be. So like I said, the two outside points are going to be at 0, 100. The two inside points are going to be 3% inward. So that's 3% on this side and 97% on the other side. And then we're going to do 12% inward for the third on each side. So 12%, and the other side would be 88%. So there, not 8%, but rather 88%. There we have it. And now you can see, if I hide the grid for a quick second, we're getting sort of this rounded shape, much like you would expect from the front of your Mac Pro. Okay, I'm going to close the gradient panel. We're going to come back to gradients later because we're going to be using some gradients rather frequently here in this tutorial. Let's grab our rounded rectangle tool, and we will click a single time. I'm going to create a rounded rectangle that is 240 pixels wide by, let's go, I don't know, 700, maybe almost 800. Let's go 780. Let's go 780 and 45 pixels for the corner radius. There we have it. And we're going to give this just a stroke. So we have our fill selected. We can go to the properties panel. In fact, we got our fill selected. We can select fill and say, look, no fill in terms of the stroke. Yeah, we want a stroke. Let's go with like a 14-point stroke. And I want to make this an inner stroke. So right here, I'm going to select align stroke inward. That way we can very easily align our shape wherever we want it to be. So let's drag this over, and we're going to kind of center it up on top of our computer. This is the handly looking things coming out of it. So there we go. We're 3 blocks from the edges of each of the edges of our Mac Pro tower. And then you can choose how high above or below, or how high or low, I should say, that handle comes up above the computer. And then these obviously will become the legs. So I think I'm going to make it a little bit higher up, just like that. And of course, you can zoom out. You can shut off the grid. And by the way, shutting off the grid, that's Command and the apostrophe key. That's Control apostrophe on the PC. See, show grid. There's the hotkey Command apostrophe. There'll be Control apostrophe on the PC. All right, so here we go. We've got our rounded rectangle. Things are looking all right. So let's zoom in and click here. And I'm going to turn my grid back on, because what we're going to do here is grab the ellipse tool. Grab the ellipse tool right there. And I'm going to hold down Shift and drag out a little ellipse that's just the size of 4 of my little grid squares, right? So it's just a 2x2 little ellipse, just a nice little guy there. And then I'm going to back this out, and I'm going to drag a copy of this ellipse across. In fact, I probably should zoom in because we do have those handles. Hold down Alt or Option, just drag the ellipse across to like right there. It doesn't really matter where you put it. Now we're going to select the original ellipse, and we're going to change the fill. So right now it's just a stroke. Why does it look like a fill? Well, remember, we have that really thick inside stroke, so it's just filling it with what looks like black, but it is technically the stroke. Let's get rid of the stroke. We're going to give it a fill. We're actually going to give it a gradient. So let's come over here to the properties panel, choose fill. Let's just grab the black to white gradient, choose gradient options, choose to edit the gradient. My, that's a few clicks, isn't it? And we're going to set this to 90 degrees, so it's going to be up and down. I may actually zoom in on the little circle here. Where is it? There it is. And I may actually also shut off the grid just so we can see what's going on. I'm going to select it here, and again, choose to edit the gradient. And we're going to add a few color stops into here. So this, we're going to make sort of a customized chrome. So I'm going to select this color stop here, and I'm going to change using the little flyout menu this to HSB. I do want to keep the saturation at 0, but I want to make this a much lighter gray on the end, maybe almost white. And the same thing here, this color, we're going to make it basically black, and then the gray next to it, we're going to make quite a bit lighter just to really give contrast to that dark streak. So we want to bounce back and forth basically. This is totally custom metal that we're making here. Let's go here and make this really bright as well right in here. Make sure saturation's down so we don't have any color tint problems. And I'm going to make this one here a little bit darker. And then maybe for the far edge, won't be quite as dark, but it'll be we definitely don't want it to be white. We want it to be like a middling gray. I'll go back to the second one. I'll make this a bit darker here. All right, so there we go. We have what is going to be our custom gradient. And you could say, you know what, I need this to be brighter, and I think I do. I want there to be 2 of these streaks of just straight white going through it. There we go, something like that. And you can adjust and tweak this till the cows come home. But there we go. That's our gradient. That looks okay for right now. I am going to select the other little circle we drew, grab my eyedropper tool right here, and just sample that shape. And you can see it's twisted the gradient. So I'll just hit Edit Gradient here. pop out the menu, and just set this to 90 degrees, just so we have the same gradient. And then I want to create a pipe with these two little ellipses, and here's how we're going to do it. We're going to go Object, Blend, and choose Blend Options, and I want to kind of max this out. This is exactly what I want. Specified steps and 1,000 of them. Tons of shapes. And my orientation, I want to keep it here, just aligned to the path, not this. Aligned to the page, not aligned to the path, I should say. You want to go aligned to the page. And we'll hit OK. And then we need to make the blend, Object, Blend, Make. Now, I should mention I have both of these shapes selected. You need both shapes selected, Object, Blend, Make. And there we have it. We have our little pipe that we've created. I want to select this pipe, hold down Alt or Option, and just drag out a copy of it because we need 2 of them. And then I'm going to come down here and focus my attention on the handle of our computer here. I'm going to turn on the grid once more, and I want to trim away the bottom curve, right? So I'm going to select this, and if I shut off my grid, I can use the direct selection tool, and I can just select like these 2 anchor points on the very bottom and just delete them. So now what we've got is something that looks a little bit more like the stand that will be going through the computer, much more along the lines of what we want. Now this is not it. Let's come up here to the top, and we want to split this path. So right now it is a path. We're going to use the scissors tool right there, and I'm going to just snip the path. It can be kind of anywhere up along there, but basically now we're going to have 1 path and 2 paths, and they just line up perfectly together right there. So here's where the magic happens. We're going to select one of our pipes and hold down Shift and drag a selection over 1/2 of our path here. And we're going to go Object, Blend, and choose Replace Spine. And you can see this is what's happening. It's going to take and sort of warp our gradient around the handle. And then, of course, we take the other gradient pipe and the other side of the handle and do the same thing. Object, Path, not path, blend, excuse me, replace spine. There we go. And as you're looking at this, you may say, you know what, the right side looks a lot better than the left side. And part of that is we didn't spend a lot of time making the gradient, so it's probably not perfect. But there's something you can do here. You can go Object, Blend, and choose to reverse the spine and see what that does. Look at that. Now we have a handle that looks pretty uniform on both sides and still kind of has the approximation of some kind of shiny metal that will be going through our computer. I'm going to select both of these blended handles, go Object, and just group them together. And then we're going to drag this group down behind the body of the computer. So here's what we've got so far with our computer. And I think before we get much further, let's zoom in on the bottom of the feet, and let's just put the feet for our computer in place. Let's go View, turn on the grid again, and I'll just create a couple little feet here. So I'll go Rectangle Tool, and the feet, we want them to go from the outside of the computer. Probably, so it's two cells until we get to the foot, or to the leg, excuse me. The leg becomes 2 more cells, and then we'll go 2 cells past that, just so we have a perfect leg, just kind of like that. All right, now this shape has no stroke and no fill, so we see nothing. We want to give it that same metallic gradient that we were just using. So I can simply grab my eyedropper tool and just click on that blend that we created. Well, there we go. There is our foot. Now, a couple problems. The leg is sticking out beyond the foot, obvious problem. And also, the foot itself is too big, all right? I'm not going to worry about that right now, right this moment. We're going to get to it in like 5 seconds here. Let's duplicate this across by holding down the Alt or Option key, dragging this right over to get both of our feet in place. Great. Now, we need to do a couple things. We need to go View and shut off snapping to grid, because we do need to make both of our feet a little bit thinner. So we're going to squish these down, maybe to about half the thickness that we had them. And we need to mask away our path on both sides to hide that stuff. So here's how we're going to do that. Let's zoom out just so you can really get a look at what we're doing here. I'm going to select the handle, right? So we got the handle selected. Select the handle. We're not touching the computer body. We're not touching the feet, just the handle. And we are going to open up our transparency panel, window transparency. There are a few different ways you can do this, but here's how, it's still my preferred way of doing this kind of masking. We're going to double click to add a mask, and I'm going to uncheck the clip, right? Now I'm going to grab my rectangle tool, and I'm just going to drag out a rectangle like that splits the feet in half, or just runs across the feet like that. And then we just need to fill this rectangle with black. So I'm going to open up the fill. I'm going to choose black. I'm going to actually make sure that it's totally solid, 100% black. There we go. And now if I go back to my transparency panel, I still have my mask selected. So I'm going to click here to get back to my editing, my artwork editing mode. And I can close out my transparency panel, and we've just masked away the bottoms of those feet. So now we have something that's starting to look like a machine that would be sitting on a desktop or a floor. But it's not quite looking enough like a cheese grater right now. So we need to fix that, obviously. Let's do that right now by creating a series of shapes that are going to really cheese grade this up. We're going to grab our ellipse tool, click a single time, And the size that I found works for the size computer that I'm creating is a 26 by 26 ellipse. So if you're following this tutorial, this is what you want to go with. And I want to fill this with a gradient. So I'm going to go fill. I'm going to choose just a black to white gradient. I'm going to say, give me some gradient options. With my gradient panel open, I'll say I want actually a radial gradient. I'm going to choose to edit the gradient. And I'm going to double click on the white spot. And from the flyout menu, choose RGB so I can punch in a hexadecimal code. And I'm going to punch in F2, 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 which is just a really light gray. Then I'm going to double click on the black side and I'm going to punch in 666, 666, sort of the devil's gray, if you will. And now I can zoom in on my little ellipse here, my little circle. I'm going to move the gradient panel over. And we can grab our gradient tool. And I think I'm just going to move the gradients origin point, if you will, kind of to the top, like right corner, right? Something probably right about there is good. Something like that. It really, it can be different. It can look different. This is just kind of what I think will look nice for us. And of course, you can always select it and edit it multiple times. I may stretch this out just a little bit, tone back the really, really bright part of it. Bring it in a little. Something like that I think will work for me. Whoop, as I just go and mess it up again. Let me undo that a couple times. There we have it. I'm going to deselect that before I do any more damage. And this will be the base shape for us. We want to zoom in even further here because here's where the fun begins. We're going to grab our ellipse tool again. We're going to click a single time. We're going to make a 14 by 10 oval, so just a flat oval. And we're going to fill this with just a really, really dark gray. I can close out my gradient, choose fill, grab like the black. But I have a hexadecimal code in mind, and that is going to be a 1F, 1F, 1F. And it's just really, really close to black, but not quite black. I'm going to select this oval and move it down so it clicks right to the top center of my gray oval, right? Now, why did it click to the top center? Well, because I have my smart guides turned on. Smart guides can be really super helpful. All right, with this selected now, we're going to do some fun stuff here. We're going to go Effect, Distort and Transform, and choose to transform this. Now what we're going to do is leave everything kind of the way it is. I'm going to say, look, make one copy of this. And I know I want 3 of these little black dots or ovals to appear within this circle. So to evenly space them around a circle that is 360 degrees around, I need to say I need 360 degrees divided by 3 because I need room for all 3 shapes. That's 120 degrees. Now I messed that up because I hit enter there. I'm going to go back to transform. Here we are, one copy, 120 degrees. But now we need to move this. So I need to move it horizontally. I need to move it over to the left. So I'm going to go -7. And then I also need to move it down. So I'm going to say move it down vertically 12 pixels. Now that I've done that, I realize that's going to fit perfectly where I want it to. Now I want this to be 2 copies, and I want you to take the second copy, and just continue rotating it around. So we're going to say, give me 2 copies, and there we have our shape. I'm going to hit OK. Before we go any further, I am going to expand this. So I'm going to go Object, Expand Appearance, which is going to make 3 little ovals for me. And this is a group. See, it's this ellipse group. I'm going to hit the Ungroup button here. If you don't have that Ungroup button, you can always go Object and choose Ungroup. And we're going to group all of this stuff together. So the ellipse, the base ellipse, and those 3 shapes, we're going to group them all together. And I'm looking at the base ellipse, and I'm not happy with where the gradient position is. So I'm going to probably make the mistake of trying to move it yet again. And I'm going to stretch it out a little bit, something like that. There we go. I think that'll work for me. I think I can be content with that. All right, let's grab those shapes and go Object, Group to bring them together. All right, we have the first of our Cheesegrater modules for the front of this Mac Pro. But where does this go? How many of them do we need? How's this all going to work? So basically, the way that these circles or these vents are laid out in all the photos I've seen is they go 8 across and then a row of 7 across, and there's a total of 21 rows top to bottom. So how do we position this correctly on the face of our Mac Pro? Well, first and foremost, we need to turn on our grid once again. And what I want to do is position the top of this. I should probably, by the way, turn on Snap to Grid as well. I want this to be 2 cell blocks from the top of this computer. And I also want it to be 3 cell blocks from each edge. So right about, let me just nudge it over, right there is where I want my very first event hole to be. And now what I'll do is I can just select this and I can hold down my Alt or Option key and just drag a bunch of copies out. So I know I need 8 for my top row. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, you say they're scattered all over the place. How's this going to snap to grid? You're terrible at this. To which I would say, yeah, you're right about all that stuff. But just hang with me here. We're going to fix this. So we got 2 grid blocks from the side of our Mac Pro. We know we need 3. So there's 3 grid blocks, and we're good. Now, watch how easy this is going to be. You can just drag a selection over all these guys. In fact, what I'll do, just to make it even easier, let's lock up our Mac Pro parts, the feet, the face, the handle, all that. So you can just grab all of these, and here in the Align section of the Properties panel, hit the little triple dot and just say, go ahead and horizontal distribute them. Now, what just happened? Well, what happened was I didn't have the setting set right. It horizontally distributed them across my entire document. We don't want that. So I'm going to undo that. I'm going to show you how to fix that. It's a common little thing you're going to have to deal with. When you open up your Align panel, you need to make sure you are aligning to the selection, not to the artboard. So we're going to do that, and then we're going to say, look, distribute these horizontally, boom, and look at what we've got. We've got our nice vent holes all scattered, shooting across the front of our computer. We're not done yet, though. We need 7 more. So I'm going to grab 7 of these guys. Actually, I'm going to grab 7 of the last ones here, and I'm going to hold down Alt-Option and just drag these down below. And these ones, I'll go ahead and position in between, but you can see that they're bouncing back and forth because they want to snap to the grid. So I actually need to shut off snap to grid here, so I'll shut that right off, and then I'm just going to nudge these over just kind of until they look right to me. I mean, you can get really technical with it and make sure it's absolutely perfect and all that. I'm maybe not that patient. So there we have it. We have all of those shapes. Now we have 2 of our 21 rows. So I'm going to select both rows, hold down Alt, and drag out that. So now we're at 4. Now we're at 6. Whoops. I want to hold down the space bar and drag down. Now we're at 8. Now we're at 10. Now we're at 12, 14, 16, 18, and 20. And then we need 1 more row of the longer row, and there's 21. So now, the grid it's just running right off the front of the computer. This doesn't look good. I don't like it. What do I do? Well, first and foremost, I'm remembering that these guys are actually only supposed to be 1 cell block from the top. So that's first and foremost. We'll adjust that real quick. But what we need to do, most importantly, is just zoom in here and move a bunch of them back. So we'll just grab all these and just move them up a bit. Move them up, move them up. We're going to grab a bunch more and move them up. I'll show you how to fix this. It's actually relatively simple. Just keep compressing them together. We need the space to just get our bottom ones in place is what I'm most concerned with right now. So I'm going to grab my bottom row. I'm going to drag it up, and we just need these to be 1 cell width from the bottom of the computer. So boom, move them about right into place. As long as they're close enough, they're close enough. And then we're going to select all these guys, and we can try to distribute these vertically across the face of our Mac Pro, but you're going to see we're going to have a little bit of a problem here. So we're aligning to selection. We're all good. If I distribute them, see, they get all kind of janky and weird and messed up. It's actually kind of a cool pattern, I guess, but not quite what we want for our computer. Why is it doing that? Well, because as you can see, all these shapes are all just individual groups. We need each line to be its own group. So I'm just going to speed up the video here as I select each line and hit Command or Control G just to group each line together. It's really fast, but instead of making you watch me do it all, you can watch me do it all really, really fast. And there you have it. And yes, if you're wondering why I made that mistake, it's just because sometimes I make mistakes. I forgot to group up each line before I duplicated them, but it would be much faster, obviously, if you just created 1 single group and then boom, you were done with it. Point is, we now have all these guys grouped up into lines, and now we can go to our Align panel and just choose to distribute them horizontally, and we get them nice and spaced out as you would expect them to be for the front of this computer. Now, it's not looking bad, but it's not quite the way it is when we look at it in the Apple ads. We need to delete a couple things here. Namely, we need to delete the bottom outside corner from both of the bottom shapes. Now, because they're all grouped up, instead of getting into the group and making a mess of it, I'm just going to use my direct selection tool, select the shape I want to delete. It's going to allow me to pick it out from the group, and then just the bottom outside corner oval, if you will, from each outside circle, each outside vent. So this is what it's looking like. We're just going to move through and delete these guys. It's pretty easy. And if you mess something up, remember you always have that handy undo. Now here at the top, we want to do something different. We just want to save the circle that's on the bottom right-hand side. So we're going to select both top, well, the bottom right-hand side for that one and the bottom left-hand side for the circle over on the right, something like that. And then we want to get rid of the top oval for each of the top circles. So just like that, we knock those out, we clean those right up, Done deal. All right, I can just zoom back out, and now you can see what the effect has done for us. It's really allowed us to create the face of this computer really, really nicely. And there we go. We've created the computer part of it. Let's real quick knock out the monitor, and we'll call this thing a day. I'm going to grab all of these vent circle pieces and hit Command or Control G just to group that whole Cheesegrater thing together. And let's go ahead and create the monitor right now. All right, the monitor begins with, of course, a rounded rectangle. We're going to click once, and I'm going to create a 984 by 566 wide rounded rectangle. Yes, I wrote that down. And it's got 8 pixel corner radius, and I did this just based on what I saw pretty much on Apple's website because I wanted the size of the screen to look sort of in proportion to the size of the Mac Pro computer itself. So there's our rounded, the bezel, sort of the edge of the bezel, and we need to grab our regular rectangle tool now, click a single time, and this one's got to be 961 by, well, probably 960 actually, 960 by 542. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to give this a slightly different color here in the fill panel. I'm just going to go ahead and make it, I don't know, red or something. And we're going to select both of these shapes, and we're just going to align them horizontally and vertically. And there we have our screen with the bezel. Okay, there that is. Now we need the stand, the very expensive stand, but the stand nonetheless. The stand is simple. It begins with a 250 pixel by 250 pixel rectangle. And this rectangle, we probably want to drag it beneath the computer, right? Because the stand should be coming up from behind the computer, something like that. And what I'll probably do here, I'm going to bring up my rulers. Let's go view rulers. And I'm going to drag out a guide and put it kind of right there so it can be the desk or the floor on which the computer is sitting. And I'm going to adjust this. I'm going to knock it downward a little bit, maybe something like so. And with the whole computer, I'm going to bump it up a little bit because we are going to be adding another piece to the bottom of our stand here. But with the stand, let's go to Fill, and we're going to give it from the swatches area. We're going to give it a black to white gradient. We're going to choose gradient options, and we're in the new gradient panel. We're going to give this a radial gradient. I'm going to choose to edit it like I almost always do. And we're going to say, hey, light color of the gradient, we want you to be EC, 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 and dark part of the gradient, we want you to be something a little darker. Let's go with like an old CD, 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 something like that. That's nice. And now it's just a matter of me adjusting where the gradient lives. So this can be completely up to you, your discretion. Let me undo that. I did what I did before again. There we go. Let's leave our gradient there before we mess it up. I'm going to close out the gradient panel, although we are going to need the gradient panel again soon. But let's go ahead and drag out another rectangle or click to add another rectangle. 250 pixels wide is what we want, and we want it to be 14 pixels tall. This is going to be the foot or the base here of our stand. So this is really what should be against the floor, if you will. I can grab the rest of my computer. I'm just going to push it down into this. All right, and I've got the foot. And I need to create a gradient for this. So let's go back to the fill, and I'm going to say gradient options, and we can close off our fill thing over there. I'm going to say give me a linear gradient this time, and I need to add 6 points. So I need there to be 4 points on each side of the gradient, and we're going to do what we did before, where we colorize the points, and then we're going to worry about getting them in their exact spot. So I'm going to choose edit gradient here. Whoop, and I guess that'll work. I'm going to double click here out on the far left side, and I'm going to color this DC, DC, DC. There we have that. And then I'm going to go for the second point, and I'm going to color this one B7, B7, B7. And then I'm going to go to the third point, and I'm going to color this one E8, E8, E8. And then I'm going to go to the fourth point here, and this one, of course, is going to be D1, D1, D1. And then those colors are going to mirror on the other side. So I'm going to go to the other innermost one. I'm going to say D1, D1, D1. And then the second one, what was that, E8. So we're going to go E8, E8, E8. And then I believe the next one was B7. And honestly, if they're slightly off, it's really no big deal. It's your iteration of the Mac Pro. And then the last one is not CD, but rather DC, 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 something like that. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to position these guys correctly. They actually aren't too bad now, but we can make them a little bit more perfect. So I'm going to say my second one needs to be 3% from both ends, so 3% on one side and 97% on the other. The second one needs to be 8%, so I'm going to say 8% on this side and a good old 92% on the other. And then for the third one, we're going to go with like 12, I guess. Let's go. Let's try to punch in 12. There we go. And then on the other side, that, of course, would be an 88. And I'm going to close out my gradient panel. I'm going to grab my selection tool and deselect. And there is sort of the front of the base of the stand. Now, one thing we didn't take into account is we need to add the little black rubber pad legs that you would normally see on the bottom of this monitor. So let's zoom in. I'm going to nudge this upward just like 1 pixel, and we're going to grab our rectangle tool and click a single time. And I'm just going to go with like a 30 by 1 pixel shape. And I'm just going to fill this with black. Let's just keep it simple here. We're very, very close to total black. I'm going to zoom way in, and I'm just going to drag this up and maybe align it to the outside of what we've got going on here. And I'm going to move it up so it clicks into place, and then just bump it into the right, like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 clicks of the right arrow key. And then I'm going to hold down Alt or Option. I'm going to drag a copy all the way across, holding down Shift, of course. Holding down Shift, there we go. And I'm going to wait till it clicks to the edge. It'll click to the edge, of course, because of those awesome smart guides. And now we tap this one 5 taps to the left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 taps to the left. And it's just a little subliminal thing, but it's nice to just have those little legs underneath there. And the last thing we need to do is add the shadow of the curve of our gradient, and ignore the stepping there in the gradient, or the banding, I should say. We're going to create a little shadow for this. So we can do this just by duplicating this gradient that we just made for the front of the monitor. Hold down Alt or Option and drag it straight up. Just kind of until it clicks to the edge of the gradient we just made. And we want to open up our gradient panel, choose to edit the gradients. I want to open up the full gradient panel. I just prefer working with the more full gradient panel. And from the thumbnail dropdown, I'm going to just go back to the standard black to white because we only need 3 points here in our gradient. So just add a 3rd point in there. Most importantly, let's just set this to 90 degrees so we've got what we're working on. All right, now what we want to do, the color over here at 90 or at 0%, excuse me. This is going to be our darkest color. This is going to be 8E, 8E, 8E. So this is kind of the shadow part of the shadow. The second part of the shadow is going to be the color F2, F2, F2. And the third color is also going to be F2. Now, why do we have a point out here? Then they're both just the same color. Well, because the point out here, we want to blend with the rest of the monitor. So we're going to set the opacity of the point to 0. And that's going to blend our shadow back from the face part of the monitor up into what is really the stem of the monitor. And if you don't think it's enough of a blend, that's totally fine. You can just grab the shape and stretch it upward a little bit, and it'll just make the blend a little bit bigger, something like that. And there you have it. I seem to have done something to the other side of the handle of the computer. Let's see what's going on here. Well, there we go. I don't know what was going on there. Something got messed up for a second, maybe the rendering. But we've got our handle back. The last thing I want to do is just add an image to the monitor. And that's going to be pretty easy. What I'll do is I'll jump out to my Finder, and I'm just going to drag an image in from my computer and zoom out a little bit with my tool, with my selection tool. I'll just hold down Shift, scale down this shape, just kind of get it to where you want it to be. It absolutely does not have to be perfect, because what we're going to do is move our rhino into place here. He's looking fresh, and I'm going to select the rectangle that is the screen. This is the bezel here. We don't want that. We want the actual screen surface. I'm going to copy that. So we're going to go Edit, Copy, and we're going to select our rhinoceros here, and we just need to mask it. So we go Window, Transparency. We double click this little thumbnail, and it should be filled with black. That's perfect. We go Edit, Paste in Front, and we just fill our shape here with white. So I'm going to open up my color panel, and I'm going to say, give me that solid white. And then I'm going to select my artwork thumbnail to get back to a regular editing mode, collapse my color panel, and of course I will get rid of my guides here. So let's just clear the guides and back this thing out a little bit. And there we have it. We've created the new Mac Pro and that new monitor, and totally fully vector here in Illustrator, with the exception of the screen artwork. But we've done it, we've made it, and we're finished. Well, that's it for this one, folks. If you enjoyed the video, I got 2 things to ask of you. 1, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you get a little notification every time a new video comes up. And also, if you completed this and created this piece of artwork, upload it to Instagram and tag me in it. My handle is @tutvid. I'd love to see it. And if you enjoyed this video, well, you can check out another video I did in Adobe Illustrator creating this glassy, super colorful planet. I think you'll really enjoy it. A lot of other people have. For this tutorial and all the rest on this channel, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. Get it, got it, good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one.